Wait, so then after tomorrow we have to rent and then we have to...
Amsterdam, they closed half of the coffee shops because of being too close to school.
No, they didn't.
Okay.
There's a proposal that's been accepted by the council to close them on the 1st of July 2009.
Oh.
Yes. Well,
Okay.
that's their intention. But of course, these people have a right to some form of compensation.
Well, they do. Okay.
But although the discussion hasn't yet started in Rotterdam, it's sure to come that these people, they want a different location where they can continue their business.
Yes.
Because to be honest, Rotterdam has only 60 coffee shops at the moment.
16?
60.
60.
Compared to 230 in Amsterdam. So closing down 29 coffee shops because they are too near a school, it doesn't sound like a well thought of policy. And of course, if you take taxes from a citizen, you build up rights, and you cannot just eradicate that license that is very real but nevertheless non-existent without compensation. So we'll see how the discussion goes in Rotterdam.
They make more wrong decisions because they closed also the prostitution area over there. And they don't have a red light district anymore like we have.
So only illegal prostitution now.
The world's largest port doesn't have... Oh, the sailors have all become celibate. That's good to know.
There are no sailors anymore on those gigantic
That's
ships.
true.
They don't come up with ships
computer
anymore.
operators. Yeah, I guess that's true. Well, they get horny too.
Now, but here is the same problem at this point. In the center part of Amsterdam, we have now our community who try to rule a lot of things. We call it the 1012 project because it's the postal code, and they now want to. We have. I must first explain. When you have a shop like this or a coffee shop, you also check by the law how you get your payments. So, how is the money involved? You buy your shop. It's called the Wet Bebop. It's a community law, and everybody should go through it. That means if you buy a shop, for instance, with a lot of criminal money, or people who are criminal try to get laundry money in some kind of businesses, it can prevent you getting a real good license. And now, at this point, there are some businesses in the red light area who have problems with that kind of law. And for instance, we have the Casa Rosso. It's a very large concert. It's a live porno theater. It's supposed to be in the red light area. It's there for more than 30 years already. And the community is now planning to don't get a new license for it. They closed a lot of brothels, window brothels, because there was criminal money involved. And now also they want to try to get the normal cafes who don't have the real money on a good base, but also the coffee shops. And that's the problem we have, and also the community, because it's a law and it's made by the people who live in the area. We choose our people who are in the community. But the owners of shops, and in the center part of Amsterdam we have, I think, at least more owners of shops, cafes, restaurants and all kind of other things, cannot choose for their own people who are in the community, and the community decide what will be happen. So now there's a lot of problem, and there are a lot of opposite against the plans of the community.
I think it's completely reasonable that the licensing bureau the people who hand you a license to do something, that they can ask you where did you get the money to buy that establishment. No problem at all. This law that gives greater authority to do a search into someone's background is now sort of, we're now feeling the consequences of that law. In other words, people will litigate against the refusal to renew their license, and we'll see where that ends. In itself, it's a good thing that the government has more than, as it had in the past, a way to check up on you. Where did you get your money? Because we know that in an open society, there's money flowing into the country that can never be explained in any way. Because the monies that I generate or that you bring into the country are more or less checked because there's a information exchange between the IRS and the Dutch IRS. But with the Chechen government, there's no exchange of any information. So we see a lot of money flowing into the city, buying up real estate, whatever, and we want some control on at least handing out licenses. That in itself, I'm a coffee shop owner myself, I think it's a very good idea. And if someone, even after 30 years, turns out to have founded his company on criminal money, well, bad luck. I can only say you've been able to make money for 30 years, but now, sorry, I don't see the problem. On the other hand, I'm also confident that the judge, who's at the end of any discussion in this country, will probably rule in favor of this one and against the other one. So we'll see how this will work out in court. But real court cases have not yet actually been held. Er zijn nog geen echte rechts.
And the bureau who get the information, who should advise the community to prevent the license or not, it's secret. And even the judge cannot judge about that kind of information. And that, at this problem, it's the problem. Because,
that's not going to work.
I have a case of the owner of the Casa Rosso, and it's just a problem. It was an illegal business 20 years ago, and there was no bank who give you a loan to buy your shop. So the money to buy a shop came always from persons, private persons who made a lot of interest, and some of those persons maybe are criminal. But if you can prove that you get your loan and pay a normal interest base, I think it's not that you are bad, but the guy who has made the loan is bad. But now, when you cannot prove you get your money from an official organ of that thing that the person you loan from is a criminal, you also have a problem with your license at this point. And that's what the judge should get a decision about, and if it's going through. But I think a lot of people who are having a shop now, and it doesn't matter if it's a coffee shop or it's a sex theater or it's a cafe, think that there will be not enough possibilities to go in court to prove they have their money earned on a normal base. And that's what the problem is at this moment in the part of the Amsterdam Central City.
And it is my understanding that if the government cannot give full disclosure of why they ruled against licensing someone in court, they're in real trouble. Because ultimately all our freedoms are based on what the judge rules in court.
Well, let me ask you something as a purely theoretical, hypothetical question. If some American, say a 67-year-old former national director of NORML,
in a suit,
and tie, wanted to open a coffee shop in
no
Amsterdam.
problem at all.
Only he cannot buy a new coffee shop because
There's
it's
no
not
more.
possible.
So I'd have to go to an existing coffee
You
shop.
have to buy an existing coffee shop.
Yeah.
That's all. But
And you should prove that your money is real.
unless you come from Chechnya or from Iraq probably, then we have a problem as a government. Because any monies that come into the country and cannot be deemed as criminal money have to be considered as white money, so to speak. And the same goes for a criminal background, you are excellently documented in your country, your whole life, so is mine, so is his. Our government exchanges information with the American government if necessary. So you have a problem if you have something, if you have skeletons in the closet. But if you come from a country outside of Europe, so to speak, or from south of the Alps, there's no trustworthy information exchange anymore, so they have to give you the license. That's the foundation under a democracy. So we have a double problem. The law ultimately will see that nationals, or well-documented friendly nationals or foreigners, are in a disadvantage compared to foreigners that have no history that can be checked by our government. So you might even argue that this law has to be rewritten, and it will be in time. Yeah? Jurisprudence will make that law workable for all. We'll see. But at the moment, I think it's a good thing that at least the government has some more tools to refuse licenses to, let's say, scum.
Yeah, because there were companies who, for instance, we have a restaurant in the Warmoestraat. It's a very large restaurant. It makes a profit on a yearly basis for more than 1.5 million euros. And we saw never customers inside. Now, they can think about it and say, yeah, that's not a good base. And on the Denmark side, we had a lot of change office where you can change just money, and they also made such amount of profits. It was not possible. And I think it's good that that kind of companies are disappearing.
Well, how does a coffee shop declare income and taxes? You can't, since you don't have receipts and so on. Does the government take your word for it? I mean, how does that work?
In effect, they have to take my word for it. That is something they have to take my word for it. I add up my turnover, I subtract my my cost, and that amount I declare as income, gross income.
Yeah.
And that's the only way that I could. The judge has ruled that no matter how fancy my books look, it is not a bookkeeping because invoices are missing. But again, to make the invoice possible, in other words, to generate a real bookkeeping that is according to the law, we would have to legalize the supply line. And we've just argued, or I've just argued, that I don't see that happening.
What they still do by the taxpayer is they look to other coffee shops, and if you are extreme high or low, then there will be more questions, of course, because they know what should be the average. If you normal, for instance, make a profit of 50% and you then make a profit of 5%, then the bills will be ringing and they say, that's not what the normal coffee shop, but explain.
Do you have to keep record of your gross receipts? I mean, is it?
Of course.
Okay. I mean, obviously, from a business point of view, but do you have to turn in cash register receipts or something to show that you have to document your gross turnover?
If you have a till for your cannabis turnover, then of course you should keep those rolls. Logically.
Yeah. But how about the supplier? Does the supplier feel the same need for invoice or not?
No, I don't think so. Because his art is totally illegal, and he will be prosecuted.
So, but how about this IRS? Like, does he do something else on the side?
He'll try to stay invisible for the IRS.
Yeah.
He has to stay invisible. So he'll have a small job on the side to explain for his rent cost and his general living cost.
And sometimes there is a difference between law and the taxpayer, because we had a case once and was also owner of a coffee shop, who was legal, it was tolerated, but you have also some deduction costs. And because he was in an unsafe area, he bought himself a pistol and he brought in deduction by the taxpayer. And in first, he get a deduction of it. And then it was a little bit strange, of course. It goes in a higher court and they said it's not okay. But so strange are the rules between law and tax paying.
Next question is seeds. That obviously I've heard that there's people who sell seeds in this country. What is all of the seed growing is now illegal? Is that correct? So,
Seeds
are free.
as the fresh mushrooms are as legal as anything that is legal.
Okay, but seeds are also legal.
Seeds are
Okay,
legal.
but how do you get the seeds?
Same way.
Same way.
What about the seeds shops?
No. Where do the seeds come from? I mean, the seed growing for seeds. The plant that is seeded is illegal as one that is grown for smoking.
I don't know.
That is these are the world famous so-called mother plants.
Yeah.
And I think that the mother plants that supply the quality seeds that are shipped all over the world are probably the best protected places in this country. Where do you keep your mother plants, the original genetic material, the strong material? And a lot of people are flying all over the world all the time to get new, healthy genetic material to keep the strains. But you probably know more about this than I do. But it's a well-shielded grow area, much better shielded off than the marijuana growing areas, because it's all about genetics.
But
Of course, by the way, before I forget, because of the war on drugs in the United States, all those beautiful genetics came to Holland 27 years ago, and in Holland, the Americans at first had the opportunity to continue their genetics on the plant. So the now world famous Dutch native wheat is not our thing. It is, of course, the growers from the United States.
It's our loss
It's
and
your
gain.
Yes, and we thank you.
Yeah.
The world thanks those growers.
You're welcome.
But we did it also in the
Same
7th
thing is true in
century.
Canada.
We got a pepper from the east and
The tulip bulbs.
the tulip balls. We got everything.
Turkey.
Our merchandise is
took over the market.
in our genes, I think.
Well, in Canada, I mean, the whole cannabis growing thing in Western Canada was an American thing. The draft dodgers moved up there during the 60s and 70s and started growing weed, and that was the beginning of BC Bud. And then, of course, when after Neville Shoemaker saying, and the Dutch stopped sending seeds directly to the United States, that's how the Canadian seed merchants got, and the UK seed merchants got to make a lot of money by pretending to sell Dutch seeds. And a lot of the Dutch seeds sold out of Canada are pretend Dutch seeds. It's
As long as the customer is satisfied, I see no problem here. And there's nothing against making a healthy profit on any product, as long as the consumer is satisfied with the price-cost ratio.
It's most of the consumers don't know what they're doing. There's something that I don't know whether you guys know about this or not, but there was a book written in the United States about to be published by a doctor, Stephen H. Fry, and his book is 25 Reasons to Legalize Drugs. We really lost this war, and as a part of, he had the very clever idea, and partly to promote the book, but he approached NORML and asked if they would, if NORML would help him nominate the Netherlands for the Nobel Peace Prize because of its drugs policy. And
Did you know about that?
No.
And this is
Did you know about that?
this is the
You know about that, Michael?
we discussed it previously. This is a quote from a thing about the nomination of the thing. The Dutch should be recognized for the remarkable human rights achievement of regulating and decriminalizing drugs, and equally important, offering comprehensive treatment to its affected citizens. The number of lives they have saved, as well as assaults, robberies, rapes, child abuse, and other prohibition-related criminal activities that they prevented, is a major humanitarian and public health accomplishment. Their success in minimizing the catastrophic effects of the war on drugs cannot be overstated. For example, the U.S. has 6 times as many people in prison per capita as the Netherlands, and still we have 4 times their murder rate. Compared to ours, the Dutch prison population is negligible, and they actually provide education and rehabilitation for their inmates. Furthermore, their incidence of AIDS and hepatitis is a fraction of ours. Taken together, these groundbreaking medical, human rights, and humanitarian accomplishments are of unprecedented magnitude. They not only serve as an inspiration to the rest of the world, they also demand emulation. Because of this, it is recommended that Luc Hulsman, Professor Emeritus of Criminal Law at the University of Rotterdam, who was originally responsible for crafting the forward-thinking drug policy in the Netherlands, and the Dutch Ministry of Health, Welfare and Sports, who administer their very successful current drug policies, be nominated for a Nobel Peace Prize. The world owes a great debt of gratitude to them, along with many thousands of activists, academics, and religious and business leaders, for demonstrating that a scientifically crafted harm reduction drug policy based on researched public health models is not an unyielding prohibition prison-oriented model. Results in a healthier, safer, and less imprisoned population that also uses fewer drugs. Now, NORML sent this out. First of all, we did a news release on it, and then we sent it out to the NORML email list, which is huge, and it includes several sitting judges. And the nominating rules for the thing is that if you, in order to make an official nomination, you have to be a government official of some sort or other, which sitting judges are. And so the nomination this has to be in by February 1st, and there are several sitting American judges who are signing the nominating papers. So the Netherlands will be officially nominated for a Nobel Peace Prize for its drugs policy. Now, the only thing that will come out of this in the short run is that the Swedes and the Norwegians will be absolutely apoplectic. I mean, they will be just absolutely batshit.
Well, especially the Swedes are, when it comes down to statistics and drug use, alcohol use in their own countries, are the biggest lying bastards that the Western world has ever seen. But of course, the committee that decides on the Nobel Peace Prize does not consist out of Swedes. It's a collection of international scientists.
But this is. Let me explain what, from our perspective, from the American perspective, which is the only one that really counts, of course, in the world today. To us, this is really important. The success of Dutch drugs policy is an enormously important part of our struggle with our government in terms of changing policy. So and that's why American drug czars lie about the Netherlands. I mean, it is, and I was, the thing I sent you, it really is true that in the United States, lying about the Netherlands is an integral part of drug rehabilitation. That people going through rehab in the United States are told as a part of their treatment that the Netherlands drugs policy is a total disaster. I mean, so that gives you an idea of what the mindset is. So this is what from the other side of the thing is, though, and I found this from direct experience at dealing with Dutch officials and meeting with the Dutch minister. It's the funniest thing of how the Dutch do it. Health, welfare, and sports. And when Rob Keizer was had that thing, we met and talked to other Dutch officials in terms of giving support to the Dutch government and letting you know that, that the American government says one thing, the American people say something else quite entirely, and most Americans, of course, think that Holland is someplace in France or something.
It is.
Americans. No, that's Belgium. But it is something that I hope that we can have a dialogue about, because if the Netherlands does not win the Nobel Peace Prize this round for the thing, it will be nominated again and again and again until the world is caught up to the Netherlands. And so this is something that NORML and the anti-prohibition movement in the United States will be talking about a lot. And I know the Dutch are much too modest and much too self-critical to ever nominate themselves, so they'll have to put up with the Americans doing.
The Encyclopedia Britannica, they use Dutch statistics in their encyclopedia because they are considered to be the most trustworthy of all statistics that are produced in the Western world. Every country has its statistical bureau, but statistics, as we know, they can do whatever you want them to do. But on the whole, the Dutch statistics are considered to be the most truthful. Hence, they are used by the Encyclopedia Britannica, a really American institution of sorts. My advice has always been just use the statistics published by Encyclopedia Britannica, send them to your local politicians or whatever. Don't send messages from Holland, because they're going to be ignored. Their own information that is considered to be trustworthy and real, that's what you should.
At the same time, if the Netherlands don't win the Peace Prize for the most aggressive drug policy, then which country is more progressive than the Netherlands?
Well, there's the thing that I think gave him the idea was obviously when Al Gore and some bureaucracy is awarded the Peace Prize for bloviating about global warming, every time I hear Al Gore talk about global warming, I go out and buy new snowshoes, and I live in Palm Springs, so I mean it's just Al Gore is such a we know that he's a complete and total phony. I mean, he may or may not be right about global warming, but he certainly if anybody asks me why I'm skeptical about global warming, I'd start with mentioning Al Gore. And one of my in terms of experience, I know people who smoke pot with Al Gore. I know that when he was running for president...
Yeah, but he didn't inhale.
Yeah, he didn't inhale. No, that was his partner who didn't inhale.
Oh, that's reassuring.
But when he was running for president, he changed positions on medical marijuana 3 times. He got so it was embarrassing. His position on medical marijuana was and the ultimate irony is that where in Florida, where he supposedly lost by 4,000 votes, there were tens of thousands of African Americans who would have voted Democratic had they not lost their right to vote as a result of the drug war, which
he didn't lose.
Well, excuse me.
It was an illegal election.
I said that if those tens of thousands had been able to vote, then the margin would have been too close to steal, is my point. And so the whole thing is, I have total contempt for Al Gore. So if there is a precedent for this, for a basis of an organization and policies that, whereas the Dutch policies affect real people and have over decades, global warming and talking about it and so on, which is all that Al Gore and this bureaucracy has ever done, if they are worthy of a Nobel Peace Prize, then it's certainly much easier to argue, and you can really quantify the difference. I mean, just in terms of death rates.
Well, Henry Kissinger got a Nobel Peace Prize.
Well, yes.
I can name a lot of people who got a Nobel Peace Prize, and history has proved the Nobel Prize committee wrong.
Yes, been embarrassing.
I don't care.
Been embarrassing at times. But the point being is I mean, this is obviously political in its thing, but then so is everything else, and so is the drug war itself. So, this is something that I say that the Americans will be talking about a lot more, and hopefully engaging with our Dutch friends about that. See, but anybody else have questions here?
Well, with the licensing of coffee shops, there's 380 or 390. Is that all that can be?
In Amsterdam,
There's just that set number of
There
licenses.
is a number of set, and it's now 240
So like you couldn't buy a
about.
fashion
Anyone
shop
who was
across
known
the
on the
street.
1st of April 1995 to commit an illegal act out of a public place, hence selling marijuana, he came on a list, and a year later he was invited to report in at town hall, so he would get the license. And we did in 1997. And before that it was all illegal, more illegal than it is today. But it's a set number of licenses.
That's why new ones cannot.
New ones cannot open. Sometimes one is moved
That's possible.
because some reconstruction has to happen or whatever.
Okay.
Sometimes in some communities, like Almere, which is more or less a suburb of Amsterdam, 160,000 inhabitants, there's only one coffee shop. So they've extended the number of coffee shops to 3. 2 are now actually in existence, and a third is on its way. But if you divide 160,000 by 3, and you divide 760,000 in Amsterdam by 240, you see there's an imbalance.
Well, Almere doesn't get the
And of
tourist
course,
traffic.
75% of all municipalities in Holland do not have a coffee shop at all. But still, the market exists there as well.
That is again the part about just again I want to buy an ounce of marijuana, and I'm a Dutchman. I live here in Amsterdam or maybe Zuidest, where they didn't have any coffee shops. Who is the typical person that would be selling me that ounce?
Should ask his provider.
No, he knows nothing.
No, but there is an informal circuit who know exactly where you can buy more than the normal 5 grams, and people who want to buy that because he said 6% is not buy by coffee shop.
Yeah.
So that means it should become some of there is an illegal circuit of people who are selling it from home.
Yeah. So basically, the small home growers who retail their own product.
And they tell to each other, and it's also a market for it.
Yeah.
And a nice example, in Amsterdam there are a lot of American expats. They all grow their own. They are a true pest for the coffee shop. Because they come in, they bring their own, have a cup of coffee every 5 hours. They use up a whole table because of their laptop. So you see, that is also a way that people deal with the cost of living. Many expats here.
I'm shocked.
You're not
I'm shocked. You can take the boy out of America, but you can't take America out of the boy. Good. Well, if there's, like I say, no more questions or no more anything, anybody else, do you have anything you'd like to add in conclusion?
I think what we do is that we are not opposite each other, but working together, trying to solve the problem. And what we as police want in the whole community is get a safer area for everybody. We're not against the coffee shops. No, we try to get together and solve the problem. And that's also the reason why we are in the tranche for legalizing the back door. Because still it's strange, we should ask the coffee shop owners who have more stock than the normal legalized 500 grams. And it's a little bit strange because for them it should be safer if they have more stock. Then they don't have to drive as much, they can provide it and put it on a safe place. And that's still not possible because the Dutch laws prohibit it. But I think as a policeman working on the street, it should be better if the back door was legalized and that the stock exchange, should be more and higher. Because then you have also a lot of less problems with all kind of things.
Would you say that your views are very widely shared in the police department? Are you?
No, luckily not, because we still have a lot of new colleagues who are very strictly thinking, and they don't see the wider view of it and see everybody as a criminal. And I think because I'm living in Amsterdam, I'm living even in the same part where I work, I see also as a private person a lot of things happening and have a very wide view. And because I'm already for more than 20 years a cop working on the street, I have also another policy about a lot of things. But you see that the police community as totally are very strictly. The rules for being an officer are very strict together. And sometimes it's good, it should be a little bit narrower. But I think you should don't overlook the whole thing. And I think by some young colleagues the enthusiasm is too high, and don't think in nuances. They think you're bad or you're wrong, and there is a very large part in the middle. We call it the grey area, and you should work in that area on a very good base. And sometimes it means it goes to judge, and sometimes it must mean you say, okay, you're not in terms with the law. It's not okay what you do, but we also tolerate it.
Well, is there something that the cannabis community, broader, not just the coffee shop owners, but the broader cannabis community can do to educate or enlighten the younger police and try to communicate with them?
We have in our education already mentioned a visit to a coffee shop and talk to coffee shop owners. We go to the museums where they sell seeds and that kind of thing. So for our education project, we still have a lot of things to do. What I still think is that a lot of coffee shops, and that's their problem, have people working over there who don't know anything about selling or using soft drugs. And we know that there are a lot of good coffee shop owners who also try to do something about education and inform the public who come there. But we see also a lot of people who put someone in the coffee shop who just came from school, doesn't know anything about soft drugs, and just sell to everybody. And then you get also a problem, because I think selling soft drugs, it's the same like alcohol. If you have a bar and sell alcohol, you should have someone behind the bar who knows and have a nose for seeing people who are addicted to alcohol. If people are too drunk and come inside, you cannot prevent them with new alcohol. And it's the same with the people who work in the coffee shop should do. If you get people inside, why you think it's maybe not wise that they smoke, or it's not wise that they buy, get them informed, and sometimes it's wise to an owner to say no. I think it's not wise that I sell you something, so I don't do that. And there are some owners who only see the big dollar signs in his eyes and only sell to everybody. And it's changing, luckily, but still I think that is the problem, because what I said earlier, we try to get and have the same ideals. A safe community where everybody can do what he's like within the norms. And of course norms are stretching. What was 30 years ago illegal, it's now legal. And that's why you have a community with laws, they should change. And we should have the noses in the same direction. And I must say, in the most coffee shop owners, we have the same ideas.
And the young policemen think that way too.
Yeah. But young policemen, it's the same when it's a completely different object. We have a quote to get and give tickets. But when the community is being safer and people obey the rules more, it should be difficult to get your quota tickets. Mm-hmm. And then you see that young colleagues, because they are in a trajectory of education for 4 years, and still every 3 months have made a proof of you made your tickets or you made it not, they change their own view. And for instance, if you drive to a red light, first you get a ticket when it was 2 seconds red. But because you should still get your tickets, and the young officers have a problem with getting the real criminals at the traffic, they now give you a ticket when you have 1 second red light. So it's not okay, but it's a little bit strange that also from the police community that should be changed. It's not okay when you give a quote to young policemen, because when you're not straight, you change your own views about what is right and wrong.
And if I might add, it is not what the individual police officer thinks that in itself is interesting, but it is the quality of the instruction he gets, how to enforce the law. That is the main problem that we see today. The quality of the instructions that the young police officer gets how to enforce the law. I think that is, in a way, what you're talking about.
Yeah.
We're going to topple that problem as well.
Really?
Yeah, for
Okay.
sure. No problem.
Because I know exactly how I should control a coffee shop, and I have also a view of a general if it's okay or not. But for instance, if I find a coffee shop and I found some commercials about
Affichering.
yeah.
Precies.
About what?
You cannot make
The advertisement rule. You are not to advertise on the product itself.
yeah. There are some colleagues.
But that means that some colleagues will see a copy of High Times magazine in a coffee shop as a violation of that rule, and hence confiscate the stock, arrest the owner. Of course, that is not a smart thing to do, because at the police station they'll be told
It's not okay.
I mean, we're
But
talking
at
about
that time-
blatant advertising.
You have a
What is,
problem.
okay, it's all right to advertise in High Times.
No. I'm not talking about
The magazine. in your
the
coffee
magazine
shop.
itself.
But to have the magazine in your coffee shop.
Prominent display of the magazine.
But it
on
can
the
even be a
wall.
local newspaper that has a story on cannabis, including a leaf in their report.
Even if you had your menu, the price list, what you sell, you cannot put it on the walls. You cannot have it inside. But normally they have it on the counter and put it with the normal readable side down. If you, for instance, forget it once, and we came inside and you see it's lying upside, he can have a problem.
Maar de brief van 1 juni 2006 heeft het van. But so we changed things on the 1st of June 2006. All coffee shops were informed that the menu could actually be turned open without being in violation. You see, that's a small step for mankind, but a giant leap for humanity.
But a lot of policemen don't know that change of rule, and still they
simply
say,
don't know.
"Oh, you're wrong," and you get a report.
It's like Rambo cop.
No, because we educate on a very social aspect. It's the difference in America. When you check a car, normally I saw and I noticed every policeman has his hand on his gun, for instance. And here, you don't find it. And I think it's very okay, because if I should act like an American policeman, I will stop working with the police force. I cannot do that.
I suppose that he entered the police force and that he was instructed with discretional, how do you call it?
We can say by our own, I don't give you a ticket
Recognition.
or I give you a ticket.
Yes.
While, for instance, in Germany, as a policeman, when he sees a violation,
He has to.
should get you a ticket.
You have your own discretion.
That's
But
what you
that has more or less disappeared from the younger generations
Yeah.
of police. And of course, there was, or maybe there is a fear for corruption or whatever, I don't know what the reasoning behind it was. But it means that this society is learning to deal with that as well. Hence an instruction letter from the mayor towards the coffee shop owners. Listen, we're not going to prosecute because the menu card was on the open side. We now have it in writing that it can be opened. In other words, it is a way to instruct via the coffee shop the police. It's just, and in a way, that's how Holland functions.
Yeah.
It's a very good example of how things work here.
I remember that when back in the early 90s, when the PC Day was first starting, and you know Mario Lop?
Yes.
Yeah, and I think he was sort of trying to get the coffee shop owners to organize and get together, and I think he said it was like herding cats. But you know, this reason that the one reason why that the Coffee Shop Owners Association exists was when the government wanted to come up with actual policies. They wanted actual people with real experience to talk to,
And so we did.
and this is that is so different from the policy in the United States, but it is also different from the policy in Canada. For example, when Canada wanted a medical marijuana supplier, the first rule they had was that they couldn't have any experience with cannabis. So if you know anything about it, you were disqualified. And that is and they even went so far as when they then set up a medical marijuana stakeholders committee to have everybody involved in it, which seems like, this sounds like it's going to be really Dutch.
I heard that there was a Dutch farmer who tried to get the medical supply in Canada.
Yes, that was another story. Yes,
Okay.
Actually, he's a Dutch American thing. But the Canadian Health Canada set up a medical marijuana stakeholders committee. They had 2 seriously ill patients who usually couldn't make it to the meeting. They excluded the people running the compassion societies in BC and had representatives, of course, from the police, because they're stakeholders, from the Physicians for a Smoke-Free Canada, where it's considered stakeholders in medical marijuana. But no one from the compassion societies were allowed to be on this thing. They did allow them to speak for 30 minutes each. I mean, that is the Dutch approach is, of course, be just exactly the opposite of that. Is that they want people with actual knowledge and experience so that they can deal with the real world, as opposed to the we've made up our mind where we're going, so we want to have the people who won't get in our way while we make our decision. And that is very different from, obviously, from the ways.
And as far as policy in Holland is concerned, on the 10th of January, a historical date to us, we had an official talk with the health minister at his office in The Hague. That, of course, in itself is ridiculous, if you know what I mean. To talk to policymakers on a lower level, on a local level, okay, that's fine. But to actually be invited by the Minister of Health, it didn't feel good. It was a good conversation. He was extremely up to the know, but I thought it went too far. If you know what I mean? Because first legalize the product, and then at the highest level, then talk to the stakeholders. But apparently that is also possible in Holland. So remember the 10th of January 2008, a historical date for the cannabis community,
that just happened,
as represented by the coffee shop.
That just happened.
Yeah, just the other week.
Oh, wow!
And that, of course, has never happened before.
So this
you can talk to the mayor, you can talk to members of parliament, you can talk to the media, you can talk to foreign police people, foreign law enforcers. You talk to everyone, but at the highest level, that is not done, if you know what I mean. But it has been done. So I'm very proud to announce this.
That's fascinating. That's fascinating.
I was trying to keep it.
Didn't work.
Didn't work.
Well,
and there's another thing I would like to say before we leave. I still think that the coffee shops will come to an end, as we see them today, for the simple reason that it is inexcusable, unexplainable, why 700 Dutch people can do something and make a profit on something that the other 16 millions cannot, including the Crown Prince. It is ridiculous. We never took an exam to get this privileged position. Yeah? It is, in all fairness, towards colleagues in the regular bar business or in any other bit, it is ridiculous that 700 people should have this exclusive right to sell a forbidden product. That in itself will, it feels like a cancer. It is not good. Any discussion, I always sense, sort of evolves around that position that we have. Of course, personally I'm extremely happy with my position, but as a citizen of a free society, it is absolutely ridiculous. Well, it's a scandal. And I mean this honestly.
It's like Churchill said.
Because if my neighbor sells a bag of grass from behind the bar, he's being closed down for selling an illegal product. if I sell a glass of beer from behind my counter to the public, I'm being closed down for selling a legal product. That situation actually exists.
At this moment.
No.
My neighbor and me, and you can sense that situation cannot continue to exist. It means, of course, legalizing cannabis.
Yeah.
That is my conclusion. But when?
Well, it's
After my retirement, please.
The makeup of the coffee shop might end, but the purchasing of future legalized cannabis, you would still go into a coffee shop to buy it? Yes, no, or would it be?
As history has taught us, as soon as a product is being taxed, because legalizing means taxing the product, then the stakeholders who are at that moment active in that market, they become moguls. They become really big because they have a head start in the market. Of course, they do have to get out of bed in time. And quite a few of us will not get out of bed in time, but those who are now active in that market, who have the knowledge, they'll become huge, they'll become incredibly big.
Do you like that idea?
No, not for me personally, but that's why I honestly say after my retirement. Because I'm
So you would rather, with the legalization and the good changes, you would still rather have it be small operations instead of one big?
I like a nice place where people feel comfortable to spend a few hours. Yeah? In the past, having a beer and a joint, but that's my
caffeine and
thing.
cannabis go very
I'm not
well
a crusader.
You sound
Well,
like you are.
I'm a crusader for acceptable behavior, because everything revolves public nuisance, whatever, behavior.
You're right.
And
Right.
all the rest is laid down in laws.
Common sense,
Yeah.
common thinking.
common decency.
There you go.
Well, gentlemen, thank you so much for coming. So good to meet you, and Michael, thank you very much.
Thank you. We zien elkaar zeker nog wel.
It was very nice to hear
Thank you for your
what you
time.
had to say. Welcome. Thank you.
And then at 7:30 at
No, I should go to
7:30 at the Boom Chicago, and the lights are playing.
Okay.
And if you're late or anything, there'll be a ticket there for you.
Excuse me, what was your name? Ron Beekmeijer.
And you're the sergeant, right?
I'm a sergeant of police, yeah.
Well, have a good evening. Thank you very much.
Welcome.
Very nice. I'm just a member of NORML. I'm not a journalist or anything.
Yeah.
This may be on the web. I don't know.
I'm law enforcement in America. That's why I was wondering if you have American police too.
Hi, Mark. How are you doing? How are you?
Good, how are you?
Not for the staff, but
Are you going to the Boom Chicago thing tonight?
Well,
If I get out in
I
time.
will be here for
Get out of where?
the
I have an
next couple of
appointment.
days. Well, I'm having lunch
If I get out in time.
with
so what those Indians in the Amazon basin speak, who we haven't even discovered, their language is just as complicated and hard to learn. But it's the same family.
For your time.
Okay.
All right. Thank you, everybody.
Peace.
Good.